behalf of Sir Padampat Singhania, on behalf of Sir Padampat Singhania University, we welcome you all in this two-day workshop on mastering the research, the thesis writing part. You see, in this particular two-day session, the objective is to guide you that how we can actually write a quality paper, what are the features, and above all, there is another aspect that in thesis writing, what are the suggestions for effective thesis writing thing. Now, research plays a very pivotal role, and main part is that when you actually make a problem statement, and after that the objectives that should be in such a way so that they have to meet the research gap, and then the results. Now, the interpretation of results is very important, whether you do qualitative research or you do quantitative research. So it's a great initiative by Faculty of Integrated and Advanced Technology, Professor Naveen Kumar and his team. And I am extremely thankful that our eminent speaker, Dr. Emmanuel, who himself is a very good researcher. He has several SCI papers in his credit of very high impact factor. And another thing I'm telling you, just to the participants, that research methodology is a very important part because that is basically the base of any particular analysis. And it is not only that only the results that are promising that actually you can write in the paper. Because why I'm telling that I'm not sure how many of you are aware that there is a particular journal of negative results. Okay, so that journal itself publishes that how if you actually make some results which are not up to the mark, then how there is a scope of optimization in order to meet the objectives. So that is one thing. And here mainly I expect that there are many masters and PhDs, because in our university, myself and our honorable vice chancellor, we have maintained a particular level that in master level also we encourage that the students should publish at least one research paper. And that's why it's very important that this type of continuous effort of research guidance will definitely help them in their particular future and also in maintaining the thesis. And the thesis part, that is another aspect, that whenever you have to write the thesis, so what are the steps of that, which chapters you will actually write first, that means, and what are the chapterization. Normally if you see any particular thesis, that's introduction, literature review, then methodology, then results, then conclusion and future perspective. But we suggest that normally we should begin with the third chapter, that means the methodology, then the results, and then the conclusion, and you have to match the problem statement with that. So the first two parts that should be actually written in last. These are the some tricks that definitely I'm sure Dr. Emmanuel will cover in his subsequent lectures. Grateful to our honorable vice chancellor for actually granting this particular permission of this particular theme, and let's hope that I'm sure that the participants will definitely gain some knowledge by virtue of this particular lecture. Thank you so much.
Now I request Honorable President Professor Prithvi Yadav sir to enlighten the audience with his welcome remarks. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen and Dr. Prasoon. It's a privilege and honor that this is the workshop where we are witnessing there are more international participants than the Indian participants. So thanks to Dr. Emmanuel for encouraging the research workers around the world coming together in these 2 days workshop, which we have scheduled from the SPSU platform just to have the benefits out of your the great research experience. As Dr. Prasoon mentioned, you have been the great researcher. Your papers have been at very high impact level. And certainly with your experience of having the research papers publications, you would guide the young researchers on this very, very important topic. Aman, if you can. Okay.
All of you, please mute yourself, please. It's my request to all the participants to please mute yourself.
Thank you, Prasun. So this is a very, very important topic, okay, where we are all struggling as a Indian researcher, and I'm sure that the international researcher would also agree that this is a very, very important aspect to address. Particularly today, the selection of the title itself is a big concern. Whenever we evaluate any research PhD dissertation, the title itself has a lot of issues, and we raise a lot of the discussions around that, how the research.
Can you, Aman, please, Amanji, please mute yourself.
Yes, thank you. So this research title itself, particularly the PhD title, requires a lot of discussions, lot of efforts to finalize the title, since title itself says the 70% of your research input and output both. So if title has been designed, selected in a right manner, your entire effort and path for the dissertation goes in a very, very smooth way. The second most important aspect is, after the title, then find out how to write the research problem. Where do you find the gap? How do you identify the gaps? And how do you put it, that gap, in the form of the research problem? So these two are very, very important aspect, and I'm very thankful to Dr. Emmanuel for taking up this bold initiative, conducting 2 days workshop and guiding the young researchers on these two aspects. Today, we are all struggling in the era of publishing the research papers. Dr. Disa, if you can also mute yourself. So this is the era we are all struggling. We are in a race to make the publications in the Scopus, in the ABDC journals, and then later the retractions, the way it is happening today in some of the prestigious institutions, universities, the 60-65% of retractions are happening in last 2 to 3 years. So that's
I once again request all the participants, please, it's our request, please mute yourself. Isaac Armo Heymans.
Okay, thank you. So this retraction is also a big problem today's context. And why the retraction is happening, that we need to understand, and I'm sure that Emmanuel will also put some effort to identify and to put forward that what are the repercussions, what are the disadvantages, what are the implications of retracting any research paper after the publications. Plus the another aspect which I request the Emmanuel to put it in that 2 days workshop, that how to identify today there are a lot of fake websites of the original journals. So you need to verify, you need to be cautious, you need to be very careful to find out that which website, which the web page is the original of the research journal, and you need to communicate with only that, the original publishers, only the original the research journal, the publisher and editor. Otherwise, this is also a business going around the world okay, that they are asking for money, and it's all the paid type of the research work. You pay, then the things would be published, and after some time you would realize that you were deceived, and that was not the actual, the original research paper or original research journal, but it was the copy of that research journal. So, Emmanuel, I am thankful to you that you have taken this bold step, address these issues which Dr. Pasoon had mentioned, I have mentioned, along with your prescribed topics which you have selected for this workshop. My best wishes to all of you for joining this workshop. This is the workshop where the Indian researchers and the international researchers would come together, share their experience, share their research process, and I'm sure that you would all gain a lot by this mutual interactions between the Indian researchers and the international researchers. And the experience which Dr. Emmanuel has brought in, that would be greatly benefited to all of you. So once more, I am thankful to Dr. Naveen, Dr. Pasoon to conceptualize this workshop and make it now a full-fledged the research workshop. And thanks to Emmanuel for coming forward, taking this bold step and making all of us the research-oriented process. So thank you once more for joining this workshop. All the best.
Thank you so much, Honorable Vice Chancellor. So over to Professor Nobin Kumar. And yes, one thing I would also like to mention that yes, our Vice Chancellor has rightly pointed out. So Emmanuel, you please actually add that section that what is the means cloned journal, because as I've already pointed out, those are known as cloned journals. That means same journal has defined website. Okay, so you please do that. And another thing to all the participants, I'm telling you that since this is a very, very important aspect, and since this is a bold step, so our Honorable Vice Chancellor wanted to make it as an event form. Initially, it was just a lecture within our institute. So we are extremely thankful to Honorable Vice Chancellor for actually making this event happen in a large scale, and great effort by PAT that at least 265 foreign participants they have come. So over to Professor Nobin Kumar.
Thank you so much, sir. I have now privilege to introduce the resource person for today's session, Dr. Emmanuel Danuba Sunukari. He is working as an associate professor in Faculty of Integrated and Advanced Technology, specializing in mining geology and sustainable environment management. His interdisciplinary work combines technical expertise in mineral exploration, mining engineering, and environmental management with stakeholder engagement, community-centered design, and sustainable development. He has served as a lecturer at University of Mines and Technology in Ghana before joining as an associate professor to this university, and also a research fellow at the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey. Dr. Sunkari has an extensive consultancy experience with various exploration and mining companies and has secured numerous research grants. He has published over 100 peer-reviewed scientific papers, book chapters, and conference papers in Scopus, SCI, E and SCI, and Web of Science Index journals and books. He won multiple Best Paper Awards at international conference, and his scholarly work has garnered over 1,400 Google Scholar citations with H-index of 21. Currently, he is ranked as the third best scientist and first best earth scientist at SPSU, according to 2025 AD Scientific Index Global Ranking of Scientists. He serves on editorial boards of several reputed journals, including Elsevier, Springer, Nature Journal. Dr. Sunkari has strong scientific collaboration with geoscientists from various countries, contributing to the diverse nature of his research. I request Dr. Sunkari to kindly take this learning process forward. Dr. Sunkari.
Thank you so much, Prof. The Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Dean in charge of Research and Publications, Deputy Dean of my faculty members present, international guests and participants, students present. I'm highly elated to be called upon to take you through this workshop. In fact, it's going to be something interactive. So the topic is the path to publication, mastering research and thesis writing. Throughout my presentation, I'll be looking at things like this: introduction to what research is, basic elements of research, how do you even choose a topic to research on or to write thesis, how do you write scientifically. We will also look at ways that you can read a scientific paper to extract useful information. How do you also conduct effective literature review? And I'll give some research tips. Then, how do we prepare a manuscript for publication? It is one thing to conduct research, and it is another thing to communicate the research to the public through publication. How do you do that? How do you select the best journal for publication? Just like our Honorable President talked about and my Dean in charge of research, we'll be looking at that. But these will be on the second day. The last two aspects will be on the second day. So today, why do you need to learn how to write scientifically? As we find ourselves in a university or a research setting, we will always be conducting research. Please mute yourself if you are not talking to me. You would always have to conduct research, to write theses, to write scientific papers. And so this particular workshop was organized so that we will know how to do it successfully. So the workshop will give you step-by-step directions on how most universities and research institutes and even professors in universities will expect you to write thesis or even a basic research paper. So at the end of the workshop, we will get to know how to even choose a topic, how to craft a research problem, and how to read scientific paper to get relevant literature, and how to effectively write a good literature review, and then the preparation of a manuscript for publication. Now, the first question I want to ask is, what is research? I don't know if someone has an idea of what research is. You can just open your microphone and just tell me, what do you understand by research? What do you understand by research? Is there any student that can help us with the definition of research?
Yes, yes. Hello. Research is an act of trying to know the unknown, in simple terms.
That is great. The act of trying to know the unknown. I like your answer. It's a perfect answer for research. Yes, so basically research is all about seeking to know what is not known. It comes from the French word chercher, which means to seek or to search. Now, when you find the prefix re attached to the search, it means again. So you do it repeatedly to look for unknown. So just like my brother said, it could also be recoined as throwing an intelligent guess and looking for answers to the guess. That is simply research. But it is well defined as an intensive search with the purpose of becoming certain. And you do it systematically. There is a process. You start from somewhere, you end at somewhere. So it is a systematic investigation into reality to gain knowledge. Now, as you are doing the research, one thing you need to know as students and as faculty members is that your readers are very busy. Anyone that is going to read your paper is very busy. So you have to start at a point where your readers will be motivated. Make your thesis or your paper easy to skim. How do you do this? You will have to use signposting. And I will be looking at signposting to guide us on how to do signposting to keep your readers in suspense so that they will be motivated in reading your paper from the first page to the last page. If not, they will get bored and they will leave your paper. Now, let's look at the structure of a paper or research thesis. Please, Olivia Afum, can you mute yourself? So the structure of a research thesis is what... Olivia, please, can you mute yourself? So a research thesis or paper is divided into several parts. We have the main body, which is we have introduction, body, and conclusion. This is simply the composition of a research paper or a thesis. But now the body is subdivided into parts. We will look at that. So now when you look at a scientific paper and you are reading it, you would see that it starts with an abstract. Later on, we will look at what an abstract is. There is always an introduction or a thesis statement. Then literature review. There is a section for methodology. Then the results are presented in a section, followed by discussion. In other jurisdictions, you will see these two merged together. So you will have it as results and discussion. It is accepted. But you should be very careful when you separate them. Sometimes you may end up discussing results in the results section, which is totally unacceptable. Now, we also have conclusion section. And in this conclusion section, you can also add recommendations. So some people can have it conclusion and recommendations. But this is the basic thing that we need to know. Then we have references where you put all the bibliography, the references you used. Then there is a supplementary section. We call it appendices or supplementary material. It's optional. Whatever you used or letters or reports you got or questionnaire you obtained, you don't need to put them in the main text. You put them in the supplementary section. Now let's look at them one by one. The abstract generally is there to briefly introduce your readers to the aim of the study. The abstract will also give you the methodology. It will give the results and the findings. So when you take an abstract, the first sentence should give us a brief introduction to the work. Then the second sentence should give us the main aim of the work. It's sequential. Then the next sentence should be giving us the methods you used to achieve the aim of the research. Then following the methods, the next sentences should be the key findings of the research. Then you may conclude with a sentence or with a recommendation. You can give a conclusion or a recommendation. That is how an abstract should be. Then the introduction is actually meant to give a brief background of current state-of-the-art knowledge of literature regarding the topic. So it is in your introduction that we will get to know whether you have done a lot of literature review, especially for scientific papers. You would not find literature review in most scientific papers. It is always embedded in introduction. So please, if you are writing a scientific paper, make sure you discuss the current state of the art knowledge on literature regarding the topic in the introduction, we must see more recent citations. But if your introduction contains very old citations, we would say you have not done a lot of literature. Then it is also meant to define the research questions. What questions are you answering by conducting the research? Then the overall goal of the research is also spelled out in the introduction. So what you do is you start broad and end narrow. Start on a global perspective about the topic, then you narrow it down to the subject you are dealing with, narrow it down to your study area, then the last paragraph could be given as the main goal and the scientific contribution or novelty of the work. That is how your introduction should be. Then the literature review is meant to actually summarize the key conclusions that you have reached in the literature, whether different writers agree on the subject or not. So literature review is more or less like an argumentative section where you want to tell us what people have said before about the subject. You will highlight main issues and controversies around the problem. That is what we need to see in the literature review. Then in the methodology section, you will have to demonstrate that you are aware of current research methods or the methods that you can use to achieve the goal of your research. So some people say, can I cite papers in the methodology? Yes. You are not the person who started that method you are using for the research. So you must pay credence to the people who have used those particular methods. Even it makes your work more robust when you cite people who have used those methods before, and we can cross-check and see that they actually even publish in very good journals, which is acceptable. It is meant to explain and justify the method of data collection and analysis. Then the results section in your paper or your thesis is meant to present the key findings of your research. Please, this must be in an orderly and a sequential manner. You use thematic headings that are planned based on the methodology you used. Because in your methods, you will also have thematic headings, field studies, laboratory analysis, data analysis. So from all these methods, you will be able to carve subheadings for the results for each of the methods. So when you do that, people would be able to enjoy reading your paper. Then the discussion is meant to actually give scientific interpretation of the trends and the key findings of your research. This is where if you find the value of something, you tell us what the value means. And you can cite some papers to support the interpretation of the value. It is meant to highlight anything even unexpected. Then the conclusion is meant to sum up your findings. And ladies and gentlemen, it is meant to highlight the significance of the outcomes of your study. In the conclusion, you will have to also state the limitations. Now people say delimitation of your study. Indicate whether there is the need to still conduct further research. Have you done everything regarding the subject? Are there some loopholes? Please, a good conclusion should have a sentence on the limitation of the work, calling for future research. Then you may have used several resources, cited people in the text. You must have a section called references. Then you will list your references alphabetically or numerically, because there are several styles of referencing. All right. It depends on the journal, the university, the institute that you are submitting your thesis or your manuscript to. Each one has a guideline, whether APA system, Harvard system, or what. You use the right type of referencing system. Then the appendices, as I indicated before, are irrelevant materials. You don't need them in the main text, so you put them to the end of the paper or the thesis. These could include letters that you wrote to institutions to gather information and they gave you permission. The permission letters and your written letters could all be put there. Then questionnaires, surveys that you conducted, you add all of them there. The interpretation of the surveys will be in the main text, but the survey itself or survey questions will be pushed to the end. Now, where and how do we begin? Now we know the structure to a paper, we know the structure to a thesis. Where and how do we begin? Ladies and gentlemen, as I indicated before, you must start broad, but end narrow with the introduction. So the same way with choosing the subject, look for a subject that interests you, but from which you can still learn a lot. Don't take a subject that is so cumbersome to you. Maybe a supervisor has proposed that you take this subject, but you, deeply within, you cannot do this. It is not of interest to you. Once you lose motivation in the subject, it will be difficult to conduct the research throughout. Motivation is very important. Interest is very important. Now, if you start broad, but you must end narrow, so your end result, the final subject should not be too broad. It should be narrow so that you can work within the limits of that particular subject. It shouldn't be something very difficult to do. It should be something you can easily find materials on the internet. You can go to the library and find materials on. Any subject you select to study, ladies and gentlemen, you should do your preliminary studies whether there will be materials for such subject. And it should also be of interest to the average reader. You just don't select any topic or subject to work with. People would lose interest. They will not want to even read it. So it should be something contemporary that everyone wants to go into. So usually what I do, I've done this presentation before to some people elsewhere in my former university. I always tell my students and faculty members, you start broad and end narrow. You use the funnel approach in deciphering or identifying the subject to deal with in a thesis or a research. So let's say you want to write something about lies. So you start broad, lies. But what about lies? You cannot write everything about lies. You narrow it down to a specific aspect of lies. Lying to my mother. So you see, gradually you are getting a topic. You cannot just select a topic for your research as lies, because you can't write on all kinds of lies. So you narrow it down to lying to my mother. Then from there, maybe there are several lies you told to your mother. But your research, you want to narrow it down to a very small aspect of it. My first childhood lie. Bingo, you've gotten a topic. Then you can now start writing on that my first childhood lie. The same thing, I'm in the mining engineering department here. Assuming I want to write a research or a thesis on mining. Mining is too broad. I have to narrow it down. Maybe sustainable mining. Okay. Sustainable mining is even still too broad. Maybe I now want to look at the sustainable mining practices in Udaipur, Rajasthan State, India. This is a perfect topic. I started broad, but I have narrowed it down to something specific. Sustainable mining practices in Udaipur, Rajasthan State, India, and I can start researching about it. It's very easy identifying the topic. So choose the topic that interests you and the reader, not only you, but also with the reader. And you should make sure that it fits the guidelines for wherever you are submitting it, maybe to your school, maybe if it's a thesis, or to a journal. If outside sources have to be sought for, please make sure you have enough credible sources available. Like the Vice Chancellor was talking about, there are a lot of predatory journals in the system. Please avoid citing predatory journals in your works. When you do that, nobody will take you seriously as a good scientist, because most of these predatory journals is just maybe 1 month, 2 weeks. You even pay, and then the work is published. Let us avoid citing predatory journals. Tomorrow we will get to know which journals are quality, where can we get the quality journals and all that, and how to prepare manuscript. Now, having identified your topic, what do? You brainstorm. You need to brainstorm into the topic. How do you do it? You have to write down all the possible answers to your question. You yourself might have had answers to what you want to do. I want to write on sustainable mining practices in Udaipo. Maybe I already have some answers. Perhaps they are practicing mine reclamation and other, practices. After mining, they do this to bring the aesthetic nature of the land back. So I already have some answers, but then I write them down. Write down opinions and questions you also have about the topic. When you do this, it will help you know what you already know. And it will let you also know what you think and what you think you know. And it will also assist you in knowing what else is left for you to find about regarding your topic. So when you keep writing things down, it will ensure that you don't forget great ideas. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are conducting research and you don't take notes, you will forget a lot of ideas. So please get a notebook or notepad or something dedicated purposely for each research you are doing, so that you can always resort to it. For instance, in my case, certain times I even have notepads in my washroom or my shower room. When I go to take a shower, an idea comes about a paper I'm writing. I quickly jot it down before I take the shower. And then I have one by my bedside. When I'm about sleeping, an idea comes, I write it down. So later on, I will collate all of them together, and then it becomes something holistic to deal with. Now, after brainstorming, you need to research. And when you are researching, as I told you, your paper should refer to high quality and professional academic sources, not just predatory sources. It means that the materials that you will use in your research, you should thoroughly analyze them, and then you can then cite them. So where can you find some of these resources? From journals, from books, from newspapers, from publications, and from primary sources, and even on the internet. These are the areas you can get resources for your work. Sometimes you can gather materials based on personal experience. You have worked in the mines before, so you know what they do there. So you have some personal observation over there. Then you can conduct interviews as well. Our brothers and sisters in the management school and those in social sciences, they conduct a lot of interviews. You can go to the library and gather information from good books and even papers that are there, special bulletins and reports. But ladies and gentlemen, the core thing you have to do is you must dwell much on published original papers and published review papers from very good journals. When you do that, your substance will be great and everyone will be impressed going through it. So now you must have some ideas that you have researched. You would have had ideas about a topic in which you want to gain more information. So you begin to read more, read a lot of articles, download a lot of papers regarding the topic. Now that you have the topic, you can go to Google Scholar, you can go to Scopus, you can go to Library Genesis and just type in the topic you are dealing with. You will get a lot of papers related to it. Then you download them and then you start sieving them and select the best. Then you can jot down important things. Now, this is how the outlook should be. When you jot down things, you should have been able to sketch how your paper will look. Maybe I'm writing on origins of agriculture. I will first look at agriculture compared to hunting gathering, and I will have to look at advantages of agriculture. I will jot down all these disadvantages, then identifying domesticate and all that. This is, so you must have a skeleton of how your thesis or even your research paper will look like before you start. It will guide you a lot. Don't just start, I want to start. You will start and get locked up, and it will be difficult. So take notes along the line, as I told you. Have books that you can, write those notes on. Now, one of the essence of this particular workshop is to guide us in crafting powerful research problems. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is no problem, there is no research. Every research is geared towards achieving something, solving a problem in society. You see, my topic I selected, sustainable mining practices in Udaipur, Rajasthan State, India. If you come to Udaipur, we do a lot of mining. So the mining may be polluting the environment, causing a lot of havoc to the environment. So you want to do a research that will give policy directions as to how to mine sustainably so that the earth or the environment will not be destroyed. How do you do this then? How do you make it effective? Even before we go, we need to know what a research problem is. What is research problem?
The country is hard.
So
Outside people are even.
please, Ali Saiba, mute yourself. Any question that you want answered and any assumption or assertion that you want to challenge or investigate is what we call a research problem. The question that you want to get answers for, you see, we started asking ourselves, what is research? And we said, an intelligent guess, throwing intelligent guess or throwing a question and getting solutions to it or answers to it. Now, the research problem is exactly that one. But not all questions can be transformed into research problems. You should know that. The process of formulating them in a meaningful way is not all an easy task. It is very difficult formulating a research problem. And it also requires a lot of knowledge of both the subject area and research method. If not, you will not be able to craft a very good research problem. So a research problem is actually a perceived gap between what is and what should be. What you already know and what will be known. So the research problem will always come from a lot of things. One of them is evolution of theories. Maybe you are looking at a theory that came to be, maybe the theory of catastrophism. You'll find out that this theory is being defeated. There are a lot of problems with this theory. You can get a problem statement out of it. You can get problem statement from peers and supervisors based on your interactions with them on your subject. The moment you have a topic, then you can also get your research problem from published research, especially when you do literature review. Most of the review papers will always be bringing out research gaps. So if you want to publish papers, ladies and gentlemen, read a lot of review papers. You will see the review papers will bring opinions of people and tell you what they have not done so far. And that becomes a problem. You can delve into it and go deeper. Now, even your problem can come about through your day-to-day experience. Then you will be able to craft it. So where do we go from here? So what I'm saying is that the research problem is akin to identification of destination before undertaking research journey. Once you know where you are going, you will be able to craft your research very well. So that is how the research problem is. And it is the foundation of the research study. Our friends in the civil engineering department, they know what foundation is. The foundation is the anchor of the building. Once you have a good research problem, you will be able to build on it to have several objectives, and then you know the methods to use to achieve it. So the research problem would result in clear and economical research plan. So if you have a very good research problem, it will help you to economize how you conduct the research. If not, you would be wasting resources. So the way we formulate the research problem also determines every step that follows. It will determine the type of study design that can be used and even how to sample subjects, variables for your study, and the research instrument that can be used or developed. It will also help you in the type of analysis that you can undertake. So that is the essence of the research problem. It is very, very important, ladies and gentlemen. So let's look at the sources of research problems. There are 4 P's, and it is from these 4 P's we can get research problems. Research problems can be gotten from phenomena, processes, theories. So if you want to defeat a particular theory, you can get a problem out of it. Research problem can come from people, demographics, population dynamics. You can get a research problem from even a problem in society, a current situation. Then even from a program, you are assessing a program. Let's say you want to assess the effectiveness of implementation of MBA sustainability studies in SPSU. It's a program, and you want to assess how it will go in the future. You can craft a research problem out of it. So from people, you are looking at populations, population dynamics, those of us into social sciences and statistics. Then you can also get subject areas, especially of problems, a program, or even a phenomena, like I explained. So if it is people, you are looking at individuals, organizations, groups, and communities. And then if it is a problem, you are looking at issues, situations, associations, needs, population composition and profiles. And if it's program, as I indicated, you are reviewing the contents, the structure, the outcomes, and satisfaction of people who will be in those programs. Phenomenon, you're looking at the causal effects, cause and effect, relationships, the study of a phenomenon itself. That is what you'll be looking at. So this is how you craft a problem. So the problem should be of interest. Considerations in selecting a research problem. It should be of interest. It should be one that you select which is of great interest to sustain the required motivation. If it is not of interest, you cannot continue. And it should be a topic that you can easily manage, ladies and gentlemen, within the short time. If you are doing MTech and you are given just 2 years to do MTech, don't select a research problem that is huge like a PhD. You will end up suffering with it. You should have the requisite expertise. Make sure you have adequate level of expertise for the task you are proposing. If it is not your area, please do not attempt. You will end up suffering. Let me tell you, most of the times, your supervisors are busy. And so everything is on you. Supervisor only guides you. So don't put it on your supervisor that he has to help you write a thesis. So select something that you have expertise in and look for supervisors that are experts in that subject matter. Then it will help you. And in terms of general research, all right, as faculty members, most of us who join are faculty members, you don't select a topic or a problem which is not directly related to your area to deal with. It will be too problematic for you. Then it should be of relevance. It adds to the existing body of knowledge. What contribution is it bringing? Is it bridging a gap between something and it is useful for policy implementation? Then are there data that are available for you to use for the topic? Before you start to even write research, please make sure the data is available or you can easily get the data. If not, you will crash. Then the ethics, how ethical issues can affect the study and how ethical problems can be overcome should be thoroughly examined at the problem formulating stage. Yes. Then novelty, the novelty of the work. It should be original. So these are the criteria for research problem. The research problem you bring should be original. It should not involve duplication of prior research. Research that has been done before, you are regurgitating the same thing in the same area. It is not good. You can do similar thing, but in another area and also adding your own contribution, new methods. The problem should be interesting for the normal researcher and the team that is conducting it. And it should be of importance. And it should be readily applicable. The investigator should ask him or herself the question, will my research help in solving an urgent practical problem? Then you have to also know that your research problem you are crafting should be feasible or amenable. Feasibility in research actually encapsulates these things. Availability of data. That will make it feasible. Cooperation from participants and institutions. You need data from participants. You need to go and interview some people. If they will not cooperate, you won't get it. If the institutions will provide you data, fine, then it is feasible. Then availability of expertise within your research team, availability of research facilities and equipment, like lab facilities. Are they there? If they are not there, you will suffer. That is how come a lot of people have delayed in their PhD programs or master's programs, because sometimes they are suffering with the equipment to do analysis. And then you are looking at the scope of the research. So what are the steps that one can take in formulating a research problem? Identify a broad field. It's just like the topic selection that we looked at. Identify a broad field, dissect to sub-areas, and select interested sub-area. Then you can also pose questions in those interested sub-areas. Then formulate objectives. Once you formulate objectives, you assess them, and then you double check. Bingo, it is good for you. Then you can go ahead with your research. So there is something we call statement of the problem. A statement of the problem is used in research work as a claim that outlines or points to the problem addressed by a study. And so this statement of the problem will always summarize the question or address the question. What is the problem that the research will address? And so, ladies and gentlemen, a statement of the problem need not to be too long. It should be just at least 1 page, maximum 1 page. It's more than enough for a good statement of problem, 1 page. So we'll see how to craft it and good examples of research problem. So a good research problem should have these characteristics. Number 1, it should address the gap in knowledge. Number 2, it should be significant enough to contribute to existing body of knowledge. What is the contribution it's giving to science? Is it leading to further research? It should be there in your research your problem statement. Those of you who are writing thesis or writing scientific papers now, please, this is very important, because this is one of the reasons papers get rejected. They don't see the novelty. They don't see any problem you are addressing. The problem should render itself to investigation through collection of data. It should be indicated that you'll be doing some collection of data. It should be of interest also to the researcher and suit his or her skills, time, and resources. And the approach towards solving the problem should be ethical. You should use ethical means, but not dubious means. There are people who sit down and coin data. They formulate data and use to publish papers or write thesis, which is unethical, ladies and gentlemen. So let's look at the format for writing statement of the problem. A persuasive statement of the problem is usually written in 3 parts. The part A is what I call the ideal part, which is statement 1. It should describe a desired goal or ideal situation. So when you are writing your problem statement, the first sentence should be talking about what is currently available, the ideal situation, and explains how things should be. Please mute yourself. Then the part B is what we call the reality, ladies and gentlemen. The reality, this is where the flesh itself comes in, the main problem. It describes a condition that prevents the goal, the state, or the value in part A from being achieved or realized at this time. So this is where you will be telling us if something is not done, or because this has not been done before, that is why this is happening, and this is not known. This is where you state that. That is where you bring the real substance. It explains how the current situation falls short of the goal. Then the part C, which is the consequences. What will be the outcome if you do that research? That is where you are bringing novelty. It identifies the way to propose to improve the current situation and move it closer to the goal. This last part, if you don't include it in your research problem, you will always have issues. You will send a manuscript and the editors will tell you there is no novelty, text reject. It will not even go to reviewers. Your supervisor will get annoyed with your thesis and then he will throw it away. So I'm going to take a classical example from one of my papers, Geochemical Evolution and Tracing of Groundwater Salinization using different ionic ratios, multivariate statistical and geochemical modeling approaches in a typical semi-arid basin. It was published in Contaminant Hydrology, a very strong journal. Now, let's look at the problem that I wrote, the problem statement in the paper. The semi-arid Proof Basin covers most areas in the Bono East region of Ghana, where farming and fishing are the dominant occupation. You see, I'm talking about what is currently happening. General things. Statement 1. Remember the part 1 I talked about. Ideal situation. The region is widely known to be the food basket of the nation. And this has resulted in the migration of farmers from the northern and the 2 upper regions of Ghana. As the food basket of Ghana, commercial farming in this region involves the use of weedicides, herbicides, fertilizers, and other farming inputs within the semi-arid food basin. This part of Ghana is characterized by a very thick regolith profile due to the prevailing climatic conditions in the area, which tends to support deeper chemical weathering. You see, let's go back to what we talked about. Part A describes a desired goal or ideal situation, explains how things should be. All right, it is the food basket of Ghana. A lot of things are happening, good things are happening. Now let's see the second aspect, statement 2. The predominance of agricultural activities in and around the semi-arid Peru basin, coupled with its thick regolith profile, has the tendency of influencing the groundwater chemistry via infiltration from agricultural lands, as well as disposables from the growing agrochemical shops and factories within the catchment of the basin, not precluding geogenic source effect. Eventually, the quality of the water would be affected, which can greatly impact the health and livelihood of the rural dwellers. Moreover, all the rivers in the semi-arid Peru basin form part of the Volta River drainage system, serving as tributaries to the Volta Lake. You see, this is where I have stated the main problem. I stated what is happening is the food basket of the area, statement 1. And I stated that because they are practicing agriculture, they are using fertilizers and all that, but I didn't state what the fertilizers will cause in the first paragraph. Now, in the second paragraph, I now bring the problem of what is currently available. Agricultural activities are likely to influence groundwater chemistry. Then I bring it down. So this is how you craft a very good problem statement. Look at the third aspect, which has to deal with the novelty. In the wake of these potential threats to the groundwater quality in the area, there is little data available on the current nature of groundwater chemistry in the area. And hence the quality to allow for monitoring and designing of proper management practices within the catchment of the semi-arid Peru basin is not well documented in the literature. The mechanisms responsible for groundwater chemistry in the semi-arid Peru basin are still not properly understood. Therefore, the primary objectives of this study are to assess the geochemical composition of groundwater and to determine geogenic and anthropogenic controls of groundwater chemistry in the semi-arid Peru basin using ionic ratio plots, multivariate statistical and geochemical modeling approaches. The research will contribute to the understanding of the vulnerability of basinal aquifers to long-term salinization in a broad context through the dissolution of groundwater chemical constituents. You see, I have stated the novelty of the work, extrapolating it to a global perspective, not only to Ghana. When you do this, your research has a novelty. You have given a very good problem statement. So when you put all these statements together, that is enough. Everyone knows what your research is going to achieve. Now, when I was talking about research problem, I talked about objectives. You will narrow it down to objectives. What then is an objective? A clear and specific goal you set out to attain in your study is what we call objective of research. And these objectives are 2. We have the main objective, which is known as the aim. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people make this mistake. You cannot have several aims in a research. Aim should be one, which is the overriding goal or the overall statement of the thrust of your study. Under whose umbrella you will have sub-deliverables, things you will do to achieve the aim, which are now the specific objectives. So we have main objective, which is the aim, and sub-objectives or specific objectives, which are the ones you will do to achieve the aim. So the sub-objectives, they are the specific aspects of the topic that you want to investigate within the framework of your study. And they should be smart. They should be realistic. They should be time-bound. One sub-objective should contain one aspect only. Don't lump up 2 things or more things in one objective. Avoid the use of several conjunctions in objectives. Maybe to determine the hydrogeochemical composition of groundwater and to assess, you see, you have brought 2 things. The moment you bring a conjunction and to, you have already said to determine the hydrogeochemical characteristics of groundwater. It is good. It's one objective. It's measurable. There is a way of getting that. But when you say and to assess the quality of the water for drinking purposes, that is another objective. But you lump it in one objective, it becomes problematic. So sub-objectives should be numerically listed, all right? And they should be worded clearly and unambiguously. There shouldn't be any doubt. So, ladies and gentlemen, you must use action-oriented words or verbs when you are writing your objectives. For instance, you can say to determine, to find out, to ascertain, to establish, to investigate, to measure, to explore. This is how objectives of research should be written. Please, Rabik Raja, can you mute yourself? When you write an objective like determination of groundwater quality, no, it becomes the main aim. The moment you start it in the noun form, it becomes an aim. But when you use the prefix to and bring the verb form, determine, investigate, ascertain, that becomes a specific objective. But a lot of people make this mistake. They will say the objectives of the research are determination, identification, measurement of. No. When you do that, that is an aim. So know how to write research objectives. The wording of your research objectives will always tell us the type of research design you need to use to achieve them. So this is how objectives should be. They should be clear, they should be complete, they should be specific, they should have main variables, and they should have a direction. So when you are doing descriptive studies, you will be dealing with clear, complete, and specific objectives. If you are doing correlation studies or experimental, those of us who are scientists, you do lab work, you are looking at clear, complete, specific, and main variables. But if you are doing hypothesis testing studies, then you deal with all these. That is how objectives should be crafted. All right. So we will be ending this session very soon. Then tomorrow you will ask questions. Then tomorrow we will continue. Now, how do you write scientifically? Having known all these things, how do you then write scientifically? Ladies and gentlemen, be original and don't plagiarize. Whatever you have taken from anywhere and used, please cite it. Plagiarism is simply passing of someone else's work as your own. Whether we do it deliberately or not, it is plagiarism. You must cite it. There are certain times unknown to you. You just take a sentence, or maybe you write a sentence and all of a sudden it is coming from somewhere. You didn't even intend to do that, but it is plagiarism. And it is a crime. They have retracted the thesis of people. They have taken certificates from people because of plagiarism. Not acknowledging when you see information. For example, data, tables, graphics. Please, who is M? Can you mute yourself? M. Ahmad. So if you go and take a figure or a table from someone's research and put in your work without citing the source of it, it is plagiarism. No, another form of plagiarism is inadequately paraphrasing a source. Please, Ahmad, can you mute yourself? So if you are not able to paraphrase a sentence well, maybe you took a sentence from my work and you like it, then you left it the same way, or you wrote it in a way that is still the same, the wording, the arrangement of the words is still the same, it is plagiarism. If you put it in Turnitin, it will catch you. So that's why I said, ladies and gentlemen, plagiarism is a crime. It's an offense. It is the act of representing another's work or ideas as your own. It means you are telling us you are a thief. You see the man here, he's a plagiarizer. He's saying, I have just stolen another author's work. Then you write very beautiful thesis, part one. Then you are proud and have written thesis of 300 pages, but it is full of plagiarism. And then you can be put behind bars. So let's see how you can avoid plagiarism. The opposite of plagiarism is paraphrasing. Please, can you mute yourself? Mr. Ahmad, please, can you mute yourself? All right, so let's look at how you avoid plagiarism using paraphrasing.
Mute themselves.
Yes. So this is a direct quote from research. Japan's beautiful Mount Fuji last erupted in 1707 and is now classified as dormant. Dormant volcanoes show no signs of activity, but they may erupt in the future. You saw this sentence in somebody's paper. It is very beautiful. You are writing something like that. You want to use the same sentence. You don't lift it verbatim. You have to what? Paraphrase it. This is how you can do it. Mount Fuji, the highest mountain in Japan, is actually a dormant volcano. Dormant means that it is not active. The last time Mount Fuji erupted was in 1707, and there is always the possibility of a future eruption. Just look at the two sentences. They mean the same thing, but the wording is different. So the direction is there, the content, the same content is there, but we are seeing that it has been written in a different way. So this is how you do paraphrasing. You can do it at your own pace. Now look at another one. Groundwater chemistry is principally controlled by water-rock interaction, ion exchange reactions, weathering, carbonate and silicate, salinization, and anthropogenic activities. Different ionic ratio plots and spatial distribution maps reveal the prevalence of salinization in the aquifer system, especially around the southwestern part of the basin. This from that paper are used for the problem statement. Now you want to paraphrase it. You say ion exchange reactions, water-rock interaction, weathering of carbonate and silicate minerals, salinization, and human-induced activities are the main factors influencing groundwater chemistry. Salinization is common in the aquifer system, particularly in the southwestern fringe of the basin, as shown by various ionic ratio plots and spatial distribution maps. You see, it is the same meaning, but written in different words or different way. That is how you do paraphrasing. And there are several softwares for doing paraphrasing. They can help you. They can assist you if you can't sit down to rewrite it yourself. So you can go to Zero GPT. There is a very good website. You can go. You can type Zero GPT. You see the paraphraser for it. And you can tune it to academic tone. You can tune it to engineering tone. Medicine. If you are writing something related to medicine and you want to paraphrase something that you've gotten from a medical report or paper, you tune it that way and you click on paraphrase. It will paraphrase it and you check whether it is good for you. Then you copy and use. So this time, internet can be used to help us in achieving the goals of our research. Now, sometimes instead of just paraphrasing, there are certain sentences you must just quote them as they are. That is what we call parenthetical citation. You have to use what we call parenthetical citation. Quoting means to repeat another source word for word, verbatim. So with such, you must put the inverted commas, showing that it is exactly from the source. All right? So keys to parenthetical citations, keep the quote short. So such ones, you don't make the quote very long. If not, plagiarism will catch you. Then a percentage of similarity will be high. Give only information needed to identify the source in your works in the cited page. And ladies and gentlemen, don't cite information that is common knowledge. There are certain information we all know. You don't need to cite anybody. For example, water is life. Who doesn't know water is life? Then you write water is life into brackets Singhania 2024. No. I mean, it's a statement of fact, a statement that is common knowledge. So you don't cite common knowledge statements. In thesis, you should quote from a source. How do I quote another author? You do it to show authority that supports your point. If somebody's statement supports your point and you don't want to lose the meaning of the statement, you can quote it verbatim. But put into brackets that person, or you say according to this person. So you also do it to present a position or argument. or to include especially moving or historical significant language, a language that was spoken before, you want to lift it verbatim, you use parenthetical notations. And then maybe to present a particularly well-stated passage whose meaning would be lost or changed if paraphrased or summarized. Maybe the first president of India, Mahatma Gandhi, he said something that if we cannot protect the land and its resources, let us leave it as an inheritance to our what? Children. I've not quoted it exactly the way he quoted it, but if you get it the way he said it, you can lift it verbatim because you don't want to lose the meaning. Then you put in parenthetical notations. Now, avoid overgeneralization. This is one of the problems with scientific papers that we write. We overgeneralize in our works. Generalization can create inaccuracies. For example, we use some words, always, all, every, everyone knows, many, never. This study has never been conducted before. Nobody, none. These can create inaccurate statements and even factual errors. When we add them to our researches, we are trying to be too arrogant, as if we know all. Be specific when regarding a group of people. If you say everyone knows, who are the everyone? Every scientist, every geoscientist, be specific. Who exactly is it that you are talking about? If you provide a lot of details, the more credible your work will be. You will want people to believe whatever you say, all right? So that it will allow them to justify your statements. Now, let's look at some of the overgeneralization statements. Some examples of overgeneralization. As everyone knows, this study is novel. Scientists have already indicated that mining activities are polluting our water bodies. Which scientists? You see, you have not been specific. You must put into brackets, cite those scientists who have published papers and said it. So that is why sometimes you see in brackets, e.g. It means among the lot of scientists, these are the ones you have been able to get. Then you cite them. Sunkari et al. 2018, Kumar et al. 2020, that way in brackets. This is the most exciting research. When you use a statement like this in scientific paper or in thesis, it is flawed. Don't say this is the most exciting research. It is only exciting to you, but to the reviewer or the editor, it is not, or to your supervisor, it is not. The groundwater in the study area is not good. Why? On what basis? You must qualify the statement by virtue of the analysis you've done. Based on the concentrations of this and this, the groundwater is not good. Now, no one has studied this before. You don't use such a statement, especially when you want to bring out the novelty of the work. You don't say no one has studied this before. The moment you say that, you are limiting yourself, you are causing problem for yourself. Maybe you were not able to search a lot of databases to get enough information. Sometimes the universities or schools you are in, they are not subscribed to a lot of databases. You want to download the paper, they tell you pay. Then you only read abstract and cite. So you have to get a lot. Then you say no one has studied this before. No. Your statement should be true today, and it should be true in every case. Tomorrow, when you graduate, the same statement you put in your thesis should be true. So you wouldn't want to be held accountable for a statement you put. So you say there are limited studies on this research. But don't say no one has studied this before. Whether you know the limited or not, just say there are limited studies. Please, AD iPhone, can you mute yourself? Now, I said there is a better way of making your readers enjoy reading your paper. You use signposting. Let's look at how you do signposting. In the context of essays, signposting is very important. It means using words to tell your reader about the content of your essay, rather than just telling them the content itself. You don't go straight away. Please, AD iPhone, can you mute yourself? Add iPhone. And M. Ahmad. Now, this is done to help the reader understand as clearly as possible. Let's see examples of signposting. We'll be ending the session very soon. What the writer wrote and how it helps the reader. These are what we are going to see. How you do the signposting. Somebody wrote this on the left-hand side, and this is the meaning of it. So in order to explain and understand the causes of coronavirus, it would be useful to apply virological theories. Please, add iPhone. Can you mute yourself? If the host is here, can you mute? Okay, let me see. Please mute yourself so that you don't distract us. Please mute yourself and stop writing things on the board. All right, so you see the statement. In order to explain and understand the causes of coronavirus, it would be useful to apply the virological theories. Now, what does this help the reader? The reader realizes that in advance, the writer is going to be using some theories to explain the prevalence of coronavirus. You don't go straight away and just write in one sentence those theories. Put them in suspense. Then the next sentence, you start releasing the theories. That is how you write scientifically. There are several ways in which subsistence agriculture can be improved. That is a sentence a person has written in his work. Straight away, the reader knows that at least 2 ways of improving subsistence agriculture are about to be discussed. You don't go in the sentence and put everything. Subsistence farming can be improved by using this in one sentence. No, put suspense. You are telling a story. Then the person will be willing to read your paper or your thesis. There are several ways in which subsistence agriculture can be improved, full stop. Then the next step, these ways include, you see. So that is why I'm saying the reader knows that at least 2 ways of improving subsistence agriculture are about to be discussed. Now let's look at another example. Another factor that is responsible for groundwater contamination is, this reminds the reader that one such factor has already been what? Written about, and another is about to be revealed. So anybody that takes the paper and even just sees this sentence would want to see what was even said before, and will want to see what will be said after this sentence. So you see, you put the reader in a very good mood that the reader would want to what? Keep reading. This essay explores theoretical and practical approaches to communication. Straight away and in advance, the reader knows that the writer will be covering 2 ways of thinking about communication. You don't go straight away and say, there are 2 ways of communication, which include this in the sentence like that. No. Precept upon precept. One idea in a sentence. All right. So what is literature review? That's the last thing we are going to look at before we go. So literature review is a critical look at the existing research that is significant to the work that you are carrying out. And you do that to actually give a background information to what you are dealing with, the subject you are dealing with, and to give importance to what you are studying. And also to demonstrate that you are familiar with already conducted research. It is also meant to carve out a space for further research. So when you do literature review, you will be getting research gaps, loopholes, then you will be bringing them out. So let's look at the reasons for conducting literature reviews. You do them for review papers. You can write a review paper. You can have a section in your thesis, literature review, for the introduction and discussion of a research paper. So I told you that in a research paper, the introduction section is typically literature review. The introduction aspect of your bachelor, your master's, and PhD thesis is also an aspect of literature review. It is also meant to embark on a new area of research for a research proposal. You also do it for research proposal. If you are writing your synopsis or research proposal, you will do literature review. So that is the essence of literature review. Now let's look at good and bad literature review. A good literature review is a synthesis of available literature research. It is not just amalgamation, it's synthesis, digesting, breaking it down, looking at patterns, and looking at arguments, and looking at consensus that have been arrived at in previous literature. It's Look at a poor literature review. It is just an annotated bibliography, putting a lot of references, just lifting things verbatim and putting. No. A good literature review is a critical evaluation. There is an objective you want to achieve. Even in a literature review, you are achieving a goal. But it should not just be that you are just looking at what has been done before, but what's your contribution? What are you bringing out? So it's critical evaluation. A poor literature review is confined to description. You are just describing what has been done, describing, but no contribution from you, the author. A good literature review has appropriate breadth and depth. All right? It is broad and it is deep. It is touching the nitty-gritties of what you are doing. But a poor literature review is narrow and shallow. And a good literature review has clarity and conciseness. But a poor literature review, ladies and gentlemen, is confusing. When you read it, it's amalgamation of things. It is long-winded, too long, and too boring. And a good literature review uses rigorous and consistent methods. For example, Prisma. All right, there are several methodological approaches you can use to do good literature review. But the poor literature is just constructed in an arbitrary way. There is no known method you are using to do the literature review. All right. So characteristics of effective literature reviews: outlining important research trends, what has been done before, the trends, assessing the strengths and weakness of existing research. All right. What has been done before? Is it good? What are the weaknesses? What are the loopholes? You identify gaps. So as you discuss each person's work, you come and say, oh, however, this person brought up this idea. Then you are discussing them and bringing what somebody said and what someone came to debate and all that. And you establish a need for current and or future research projects. So how is the outline? First, you formulate a problem. It goes back to how we did it. Problem, which the topic or field is being examined. Then you now set literature for materials relevant to the subject that you are exploring. Once you know the problem you are dealing with, you start searching in databases, get the required literature, then you can refine your problem. You can use a lot of search techniques, the Boolean operators. For example, if you are working on sustainable mining, like I gave my topic, I can put sustainable mining in Google Scholar, in how do you call it, Scopus, all the databases. Then I get a lot of papers. Then I can tune it more. Sustainable mining in India. Then I will get sustainable mining papers related specifically to India. Then I can even add Rajasthan state. Then I will get a lot. But my study area is Udaipur. But I've gotten Rajasthan state where Udaipur is part. So related areas around. Then I can now review all these. And when you do the data, you get, evaluate the data. How do you evaluate it? Extract data, produce tables, and discuss what each person did, their key findings. That's what I usually tell my students. You create a table, researcher, subject, key findings. And that will be a complete summary of all the literature you have reviewed. It makes a significant contribution to the understanding of the topic. Then you can now analyze and interpret, discuss the findings and conclusions of pertinent literature, and format the bibliography. So what are some of the tips of formatting? We've already looked at this. I won't look at how do you call it, formulate a problem. So I will go on ahead. So all that you are doing, make sure you save your references. Whatever you extract. So you will be using the best resources to save your references. If you are doing it manually, you may suffer. So we have reference managers or citation managers like RefWorks or EndNote or Zotero or Mendeley. Learn how to use them online. You can easily learn how to use them. As you are doing, it is also keeping your references for you. So the moment you finish the work, you already have your list of references. You won't suffer to go and sit. Imagine getting about 200 and something citations, and you have to get the references for all of them. So data evaluation. You select the literature and read widely. When you read for your literature, you are actually doing two things at the same time. You are trying to define your research problem. You are finding a gap, and then you are asking questions. Then the other thing is that you are trying to read every source relevant to your research. And ladies and gentlemen, it's usually impossible to do the latter. What I mean is trying to read every source relevant to your research problem. It's not possible, but you would have read a lot related to it. So data evaluation, selecting the literature. As you define your problem, you will more easily be able to decide what to read and what to ignore. So that is the reason you need to do a lot of literature review and read the papers and evaluate them. How to read the material? Reading for the bigger picture. Read the easier works first. When you download papers, look at them. Which ones are very easy? Read them first before you go to the more complex ones. If not, when you start more complex ones, you will abandon the project. It will become too boring to you. Then you skim the document and identify major concepts. After you have a broad understanding of, let's say, from 10 to 15 papers, it means that you are ready to start to see patterns. You would have actually seen that some key researchers were agreeing on one thing, and some were disagreeing. So you see groups of scientists arguing on a point, others disagreeing on a point. For example, some researchers think X causes Y, others that X is only a moderating variable. You would have seen that trend. All right. And then narrow down your focus. Start from new material to old. That's why I said your literature review should be reviewing papers that are very recent, at least the past 5 years. Start from new material to old material. And please, as much as possible, if you can cite very recent works, at least 5 years old, that is the best for you. Let's say from 2020 up to date. If you can get references related to that, fine. Sometimes too, it's difficult. You may have to get some old references, but don't let them be too much. All right? As you read and become more informed on the topic, you will perhaps need to go back and do some more focused searches. Then you will now cogitate, you analyze and weed out the ones that are not important. You exclude them. Then you can spend some time with experienced researchers in the field. You know someone who is very good in that area you are researching, go to that person and get feedback and, talk with the person. The person can help you identify certain problems and how you will eliminate them. And then you now need to read the material closer. Step one, what do? Read the abstract. When you download the paper, read the abstract. Then you can decide to read the article in detail. Ladies and gentlemen, after reading abstract, sometimes you may not need to read the entire paper again. You see that the paper, it doesn't contain anything. Then step two, read the introduction. The introduction will explain why the study is important. As we have already seen how introduction is written, we don't need to bother ourselves. It will give you review and evaluation of relevant literature. I told you the introduction contains literature. Then the third step is read method with a close and a critical eye. From introduction, move straight to the methods. Then with a close eye, focus on the kind of participants the scientists used, the measures and the procedures or protocols they used. Then maybe you can also replicate that or use that in your research. Then the fourth step is evaluating the results. Go to the results section. Do the conclusions seem logical or they are illogical? Are you able to see some bias on the part of the researcher? Everything is from his own opinion. Then take the discussion with a grain of salt. Edges are smoothed out. Be very interested in limitations of the work. That is where you can even also get a problem for your work. Once you see that the person said he was not able to do this, bingo, you can also take something on that. Now, after narrowing, you analyze the literature. Take notes as you read through each paper that will be included in the review. And the notes that you're going to take will include, for example, the purpose of that particular study you reviewed, the synopsis of the content or summary of it, what methods were used, and what were the key findings gotten. You take notes of that. And that's why I say you can now create a table, researcher, subject, and then key findings. It will help you. If you have a table like this for all the papers you reviewed, once you are able to summarize that in that table, you don't need to go back to those papers. Some people construct a table of info to make it easier to organize their thoughts, like I just said. So organize your review in a very nice way. So ladies and gentlemen, questions to consider in your review. What do we already know in the immediate area concerned? Your review should talk about current research on that area. What are the characteristics of the key concepts or the main factors or variables? The literature review can be conceptual or it can be empirical. All right? Conceptual means you are just looking at concepts, defining concepts. And empirical means discussing findings of people. Maybe they did some real research. You discuss that. What are the relationships between these key concepts, factors, or variables? And what are the existing theories? And if there are inconsistencies and shortcomings, you should be able to get all of them. What views need to be tested? And what evidence is lacking? Why study the research problem? And what research designs or methods seem unsatisfactory in the approach the person used? So I'm not going to bore you with most of these things because we looked at them. So these are the tasks, how the literature review should be. 4 analysis tasks of literature review. You summarize what has been done before, synthesize by getting, how do you call it, patterns, people who agree to each other, people who disagree to each other. Critique, bring your own voice. Let us see what you have reviewed, whether there is a problem, there is a gap. They have done this, but this has not yet been studied, or this is still lacking. Then you can do comparisons as well. So the summary and synthesis, you do it in your own words. What do we know about the immediate area? Those are the things you should be looking at, these key things. For example, sample language for summary and synthesis, the language you can use when you want to summarize. For example, Sunkari 2024 has demonstrated. It means you are summarizing my research. Work by Zango et al. 2021 was concerned with Abu and Anani 2019 compared the mineralogy and geochemistry of sandstones in there. It means you are summarizing and synthesizing research of previous people. Additional work by Asiedu et al. 2018 and Nude et al. 2017 deals with, this is how you summarize research. These are some of the phrases you should be using. So let's see a typical example. Under the restriction of small populations, 4 possible ways to avoid premature convergence were presented. The first one is to revise the gene operators. Griffiths and Miles 2023 applied advanced 2-dimensional gene operators to set the optimal cross-section of a beam and significantly improve results. The second way is to adjust gene probability. Late and Topping 2020 adopted a variable mutation probability and obtained an outperformed result. You see, you have summarized and synthesized previous research on that subject. This is how you should write your literature review if you want to summarize and synthesize. Now, what about if you want to compare and critique? Here you are evaluating the strength and the weakness of the work. How do the different studies relate? What is new? What is old? What is controversial? That is what you are looking at. So let's look at some of the language tenses you can use when you are comparing and critiquing. Now, in this ambitious but flawed study, Jones and Wan 2023, you see, you have actually critiqued their work. It means their work, they were too ambitious, but the work is flawed. And you give the reason it is flawed. These general results reflecting the stochastic nature of the flow of goods are similar to those reported by Shakir and Nen 2022. You see, you have compared. That is how you write literature review. So let's see a typical example. The critical response to the poetry of Phyllis Whitney in 1970 often registers disappointment or surprise. Some critics have complained that the verse of this African-American slave is insecure. Who are those critics? Into brackets, Collins 1975. Imitative by Richmond 1974. And incapacitated, Beck 1991. At worst, the product of a white mind, Jameson 1974. Others, in contrast, have applauded Whitley's critique of Anglo-American discourse. For example, you see, you said others, but you cannot cite all of them. That is why you see in brackets, e.g. You give the few that you can cite. Kendrick 1993, her revision of literary models. You see how you have compared and critiqued. This is how you write a literature review. So some of the adjectives you'll be using is unusual. If you want to criticize this unusual research, small, simple, exploratory, limited, restricted, flawed. These are some of the terms you should be using. Now, analyzing, putting it all together. Once you've summarized, synthesized, compared, and critiqued your chosen material, you can then consider whether these studies demonstrate the topic's chronological development in time. It has shown different approaches to the problem. It shows an ongoing debate. There is a center on a seminal study or studies. Seminal means something cutting edge or a breakthrough research they are doing. It has demonstrated a paradigm shift. You will be able to get all that. Now, when you do that, you put all together. What do researchers know about this field? From all the analysis you would have done, you will be able to know this. What do the researchers not know? You would have been able to answer that in your literature review. Why should we further study this topic? What will my study contribute? That is it. So this is how the body of a literature review should look like, organizing literature review. So usually you can have introduction to the literature review chapter. Then you write some short sentence. This aspect of the thesis will cover so and so and so. You write something like that. Then you have the body. Don't write body as a title, but just start breaking it into sections. Section 1 can be a subtopic. I was working on sustainable mining practices in Udaipo. So in my literature review, first I may be looking at sustainable mining as my first section. Then I'll look at advantages of sustainable mining, disadvantages or setbacks of sustainable mining. These are subheadings I can be having on literature review. Then I browse about them. Then I can now conclude. Summarize all that you have gotten from that. This is for literature review in a thesis. So you organize it using 5 common approaches: topical, distant to close, debate, chronological. Some of the literatures are debates. Some are chronological, looking at events that happened from the beginning and have been modified to the current year, and seminal or cutting edge. So I'm not going to bother you with all these. I'll share the slides if you need them so that you can have time to ask some questions. So let's conclude with this. Research tips. Use the A to Z guide to find key databases and resources related to your topic. And always, every university has a librarian. Even though you are a professor, you can still go to the library. You can consult the librarian to give you recommendations on how to use some of the resources. Now there are AI tools that we can utilize to our advantage. They can help you curate things very well. I'm not saying use AI to write papers. I must state that clearly. But it can guide you in doing certain things. Talk to experienced researchers in the field, and they can recommend resources and identify key works and authors for you. And another thing is that you must also take a cursory look at reviews in completed dissertations. If you're writing thesis and you're in SPSU and you've not gone to the library to check how theses have been written in SPSU, you'll be having a problem. You are in UMAT, go to the library, take sample thesis. You are doing bachelor or BTech or BSc, go and check BSc thesis in mining engineering that have been done before and see the format. Then you will have an idea of the requirements to use. And when you are collecting references, use a citation management tool. As I told you, if not, you will suffer. You can use EndNote, Zotero, RefWorks, Mendeley, and the others. All right. And when you are searching the literature, please, there are a lot of methods you can use. Numerous methods exist for conducting systematic literature reviews. They include scoping reviews, meta-analysis, mixed methods reviews, qualitative systematic reviews, and preferred reporting items for systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Short, Prisma.
What?
The short. So Prisma is the best I can even recommend for you because it's a reliable framework for assessing the important research articles, and it will define how you included them and how you excluded them when you were downloading. So Prisma is the best. If you don't know what Prisma is, just look at this. This is a typical example of Prisma from one of my papers with my postdoc host or professor in the University of Johannesburg. So we first identified papers from various sources, 4 databases, Scopus, 20 papers we downloaded on that subject, Google Scholar, 40 papers, Science Direct, 50, Web of Science, 50, and in total, they were 160. But then we had to go through all of them, and we removed 42. Why did we remove them? Publication records removed for screening. Why? Because they were duplicated. We could find the same paper in Scopus, the same paper in Google Scholar, so about 42 of them, we removed them. Then you go to the screening stage. What is left is 180 if you subtract 42 from 160. So we screened 118, and for them also, we had to remove some. Publication records were manually excluded. There were some titles that were not relevant to what we're doing, about 5 of them. And abstracts were removed, 2 of them, because they didn't contain anything. So in all, 7 were removed from the 118, leaving 111. So these were sought for retrieval. Then we try to now retrieve information from them. And out of them, 2, we couldn't get what we wanted. So we threw 2 of them away. 2 out of 111, you get 109. So these were now assessed to be used for inclusion in the research. But out of them, still we had to go deeper and excluded some to get what we will use. So publication records excluded in full text with reasons. Titles were not relevant to the study's objectives. 7 of them. 7 papers out of the 109 were not relevant. Original research findings were not presented even in the abstract. I tell you that you can read some abstract and there is no finding, no key finding in an abstract. 3 of them from the papers we downloaded. And publications were from conferences, workshops, and short papers. 2 of them, we were not interested in short papers, we were interested in full-length papers. So we excluded them. If you count 7 plus 3, 10 plus 2, 12, when you subtract from 109, you get 97. So we use 97 papers in the review. And once you have this as a method for your literature review, if you're writing a review paper, I'm telling you it will be good. And I'm advising all of you who are students, your literature review section, please transform it into a paper and publish it as a review paper. And you use this kind of method, it will be accepted. And the review papers get a lot of citations, more than, research papers. All right. So some tips in revising your literature, look at the title, is it consistent with your content, introduction, and all that. So ladies and gentlemen, when you do all these things, you finished. You finish writing your paper, you finish writing your thesis, you can submit it to your supervisor and be happy, and you can also submit it to the journal for publication. So tomorrow, we will now do that aspect, how to prepare a manuscript from the research you've conducted. Maybe you've written thesis. You want to extract the thesis and transform it into a manuscript and send to a journal for publication. Or you are a faculty member. You've conducted your research. Then you want to now write a scientific paper, a manuscript, and send to a journal for publication as a paper. How do you do it? How do you select the best journal? We are going to look at that tomorrow. So you have finished the whole work. You did it, and thank you. So I think it is now time for questions. So if you have a question, you can just put up your hand. Yes, Clement Isaka. Or I don't know whether my dean is available. If he's available. Okay, no problem. So Clement, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very insightful and helpful opportunity for us, and we want to thank you. I want to thank you. My question is just to clarify. I'm working on a paper with some team, and there was this discussion of having a whole literature review as a chapter in the paper. It's not a thesis, it's a paper we are working to publish. And I was of the view that we should try to merge everything in the introduction. I just want to search in terms of trying to get sections of your review. Can you match that in your research? I mean, in the introduction, because I've read a number of papers, but I've not most of them to my so far papers that are published don't most of them don't have literature review as a whole chapter in the manuscript. I don't know whether it is advisable or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Clement, for the
I
question.
know. Yeah.
Yes. So as I said earlier on, in most scientific papers, you don't have literature review section. If it is original research you've conducted, the main thing is to have your abstract introduction. Then you have, let's say, study area or methodology under which you can have study area. Then you have method. I mean, the methodology we've already discussed that. Then you have results and discussion. Then you have conclusion. You don't need to have a separate literature review. The literature review is embedded in the introduction. That is why the introduction, I told you, will start broad and end narrow like a funnel.
Okay.
You discuss all literature regarding the topic from global perspective to national perspective. Then you narrow it down to your study area. Then the last sentence or last paragraph should be talking about the novelty of the work and the aim, the goal of the work. So your literature review should be embedded in the introduction, not a separate literature review section. I don't like to see that you have introduction, you still have a section in the scientific paper, literature review. No.
Okay. Okay, that was exactly my.
In your thesis, yes, you can have a chapter 2 or chapter 3, literature review. Problem. But for scientific paper, as I gave you the structure, introduction, methodology, results, discussion, conclusions, strictly, that is how it should be. Do you get it?
Yes, thank you very much. That was actually my concern today with my team.
All right.
Thank you.
So I think I've answered your question. So John, stop.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much for the insightful presentation. I've really learned a lot. I have two questions. One is about some of the words that you use to describe someone's work. For instance, if you say this work, this flawed work, you know, something like flawed, wouldn't you be sounding a bit arrogant? I don't know, but wouldn't it be sounding like you are disregarding someone's work?
Yes, you have a good point there.
Yes, and the second one is, let's say I'm doing a research. I'm not necessarily doing a systematic review. I'm just doing a research work, and I have to do literature review as part of it. Does it have to be a systematic review before I then summarize it, or what? I'm not sure if you get what I mean. But all I'm saying is, does every literature review have to be a systematic literature review?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So let me address the last question first. It's not every, I mean, you have to look at the scope of your work, the objective of the work. Then why did I pause this? Then you can actually identify which type of review to use. The scope of the work, the objective of the work, and then data available. Availability of information will guide you on which type of review to use, whether systematic review or you are going to do a critique, meta-analysis, or something. The kind of data that is available is what will guide you. It's not every review that must be a systematic review, no. So if you check in literature or internet, you will see that we have several kinds of reviews. People will write a paper and say a systematic review. People will write and say a meta-analysis. It depends on the goal of the work. Then the other one you stated, yes, you are correct. If you say this research is flawed, it may sound a bit arrogant. So it is very renowned scientists or experts in their field who are able to use such statements, and they have their way through because they have published a lot, have patents, and well-known scientists in that area. People are even afraid to even critique because they will bring powerful, points to buttress what they are saying. But if you are a novice like me, we are starting, you don't need to go that tangent. So use more, acceptable words, but which in the long run will be criticizing that particular work, but not in an impolite way. All right, those were just general things I give to you, but you have to apply common sense.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Ibrahim Bema.
Hi, Doc, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, that was a very wonderful presentation from you. Just so you know, it's almost 12 a.m. in Australia, and we are all in the office listening to you. I have one important question that I would want to find out. When you want to present the limitation of your work, you mentioned that you always have to state the limitation of your work because you have not done everything. What is the effective way to present a limitation without undermining the research? So that is the first question.
Okay.
The effective way to present your limitation without undermining your research. And also, because you are also an editor in very reputable journals, and of course with the important works you have done, I would also want to find out what are some of the very common reasons for desk rejection. Sometimes you submit a paper to a journal, and then the editor rejects the paper outright without even going to review. So because you have that experience, I would want to know some common reasons for outright desk rejection.
Okay.
And my last question, which is also very important to me, is that in the course of research, sometimes what happens is that you read a paper, and then the paper is citing another paper, which is a very old paper, like 1920 or 1950. Okay? And you would want to cite the same source, but you don't have the paper, right? You don't have the original paper. So in that case, is it acceptable that you cite the paper blindly without reading the original paper, or how do you go about that?
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, so looking at your last question, so assuming you read it from a particular paper, and they cited the old reference, the original source. But you are looking for the original source, you cannot get it to download. The question is, can you still cite it blindly without having, to read it yourself? So what you have to do is, the source you are getting it from, is it genuine? If it is in a renowned and a reputable journal, we can believe that, yes, the reviewers and the editors went through it, and whatever that is there is okay. And once the person has brought that sentence or statement and attributed it to the original source, and you also want to use it, you can also attribute it to the original source, but you can find a way and state as though like it has been modified or also agreed upon by the new researcher, the one you found it in. You have to find a way and still pay some credence to the source that you got it currently. So you can cite it blindly, but check the journal in which you saw it.
Okay.
That is very important. If the journal in which you saw it is not a good journal, because most of them, the citations are even flawed. They are just trying to fill space. So that one, you may be crippling yourself. They will go and cross-check, and maybe that particular paper never said anything like that. But as much as possible, please try to get the original source. If you cannot download it at where you are, look for your friends elsewhere. Maybe their universities and whatnot have, some subscriptions to those journals, and they can easily download. Then they will download for you. Then you can read it for yourself and know whether the person actually said it. Then you can cite that person. So I think, that is what I can say with respect to that. Then why DEX rejection for most papers? In fact, tomorrow we'll be looking at that, but I can just give you an overview of that. Number one, language problems, grammatical errors. If you write a paper, a manuscript that is grammatically flawed, tenses are bad, I tell you that you will have an issue. The moment the editor goes through it, yes, just yesterday, somebody sent a manuscript, and I was assigned as editor for that manuscript in the Springer Nature Journal. So I was going through, and I saw that the language was bad. When you are reading, you don't even know what the person is saying. Tenses are anyhow. So with this, it cannot even go for review. The editor will just recommend that it should be DEX rejected. Language is one. Then number two, not following the guidelines stipulated by the journal. Each journal has guidelines. So you must follow those guidelines as they are, how to prepare the manuscript, the type of references or citation style to use. You should follow it. If not, they will reject it. Some of them, they are magnanimous. They can send it back to you and tell you to do those things before resubmitting. Others will just reject it outrightly, especially the top-notch journals. They don't have time to waste with you. Then the third one is the novelty of the work. If you are not able to spell out clearly the novelty of the work in the paper, once the editor goes through the manuscript, he's trying to look at how novel your work is. How is it contributing even to science? What practical solutions are you bringing on board? If there's nothing like that, they will reject it. So you may see that some of these statements are common. When they are DEX rejected, they will say your work is not novel, this and this and this. That is the point. The novelty. Tie it with the previous researches and let us see the difference with the previous research that was conducted in that area. Then another thing is self-citation. You oversight yourself. Everywhere throughout the manuscript, you are citing yourself. Because you have published some papers before related to that, you want to get more citations. It is unethical to do such. So you can get DEX reject. Then also using conventional methods. You are not using any contemporary or modern method, modern approach to doing that kind of research, but you are using what has been known years ago, traditional methods. They will say there is nothing new. You are not adding anything new. You are just regurgitating what has been done before. So your paper will not even go to reviewers. They will reject it outright. Now, the figures, the quality of figures you produce. If your figures are blurry, they will not even let it go for review. So you must produce sharp images, use higher resolutions. So that's why you need to use some software to enhance the resolution, maybe, Origin, and then maybe Corel Draw and the others. You can enhance the quality of your images before you use. And then plagiarism. That one is the number one self. So yesterday, like this, when I was going through that manuscript, Springer Nature gives you access to the inbuilt Authenticate software to identify the plagiarism percentage. So I just ran it, and then the person had 22%. But with the 22%, each individual source should not be more than 5%. This is what you should know. Your plagiarism percentage can be quite high, let's say 20, 22. But if each is less than 5%, it can be accepted. But if a single source of similarity is more than 5%, 6%, 8%, they will reject it. Some journals will be magnanimous. They will tell you to reduce and resubmit. So those are the things. Now, you also asked a question about the effective way of presenting limitation without undermining your own research. That's a very good question. If not, you'll be choking yourself. People ask, then what is the essence of doing this work? If you are saying you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, then what is the essence of doing this, your work? All right? What you should be talking about could be maybe methods that at the current time and with the resources you have is not possible. Or methods that have been developed and people have used them somewhere else, they are still in the evolving phases. You are suggesting that future researchers should also try to use them on the same study area that you have worked in, on the same subject, to see whether it will work. So in that way, you are not choking yourself that much. You are not even, because currently the method is still evolving. What shows it will even work? But you are just suggesting that let's try it out. And never use logistic constraints as the main reason for the limitation of your work. That could be the main reason, but don't point it out clearly in the paper. The thesis is fine, thesis is accepted. But scientific paper, don't say because you didn't have enough money, enough resources, so you couldn't do isotope analysis. No. They will say, then all your findings are not making sense to us. So try to avoid some of these things. For example, AI that has come. You are a guru in AI, and it's not everybody who knows how to use AI. Now, even when the researchers read your work, they realize that maybe you are a hydrogeochemist like me. I'm not good in AI. All my things, I don't use AI. And AI is an emerging field, or if it has been there before, but most people don't know how to, play around with it. So you can propose that several algorithms should be tested with what you have done so that we can see what will happen. Because this one is clear. It's not everyone who knows even how to do the AI iteration. So that is how you can address such a situation. So have I answered your question?
Yes, very well. Thank you very much.
All right. So Ramat, we'll take the last 3 questions, then we go.
Okay. Hello.
Yes.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Sunkari for such an informative session. But I had 2 questions. My first question was on, in the beginning, you did mention that if you are picking up a research proposal and there's not a lot of information about it, like previously, we should not, you will not advise that we do that. However, my question is, if there were, for example, there are at least 3 different methods in a particular field, but you wanted to introduce a novice one based on those 3 methods, but your novel approach, there's not a lot of information about it. How would you advise me to proceed as an MSc student on that particular issue? And my second question was on literature review. You'd mentioned that we should look for papers that were at least 5 years old. My question is, how far backwards can we go in our citation?
Okay, thank you so much. All right, how far backwards? So I think I already stated it clearly, if I understand your question. I said at least 5 years. So if we're in the year 2025 and it has just begun, so maybe you can start from even 2019 to 2025. Papers that were published within that time span, they are the ones you should be relying more on. At least you can use some of the old ones, maybe 2017, 2018, but not a lot, especially in your introduction. The introduction, as I told you in a paper, is like, that is where you discuss all your literature. You must prove that you've done current state-of-the-art literature review. You've reviewed the most recent works in the field. So you should cite works that are very new, more recent. In fact, your first paragraph should even be contained 2025, 2024 citations, so that we will know that you've done a lot. All right. Then novel approach, and with no, and you don't have a lot of information regarding it. What you should do is don't just use only that approach. Also add a conventional approach that is known. That is the secret. Don't just use that your novel approach that you don't have a lot of research on. Add a conventional approach that is known with your novel approach, and you do a comparison. So with that one, you will have a lot of works on, a lot of citations or references to rely on for the conventional approach. But with your novel approach that you don't have a lot, it will become a little bit silent, but your voice will become louder. Everyone reading will now be seeing the contribution you are bringing, because you are even comparing what you have with what is known, the conventional way of doing it. So that is the best way of doing it. But if you want to just have only your novel approach, it may be flawed. People may say, how does it compare with what is already known in the system? A lot of scientists want you to do comparison with what is known. All right, I think I've answered your question. Okay, so let's take Joseph Balam.
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. It is a honor to be part of the class. I think a lot has been learned, and I'm really grateful. But I actually want you to clarify this place for me. I think you just talked about it, but I would like to get more in depth on it. Like in terms of citing, if you come across a specific paper, where most of the things that you need, you can find them in. Is it advisable for you to like take like more than 3 or 4 citations from a single paper? Will that affect your work, or how will that be looked at?
Okay, so that is also a good question. The issue is that when you take a lot of citations from a single paper, you may end up having higher similarity, because you may end up taking them verbatim the way they are arranged. The in-text citations are arranged for that sentence that you are citing, and put it also in your own, paper. Even though you would have paraphrased that sentence, you will still arrange the citations in the same way. Once you arrange them in the same way, similarity percentage will catch you, or plagiarism will catch you. So please avoid taking a lot of citations from one paper. Have a lot of papers. So one thing I do is, when I'm writing a research, I download a lot of papers and I classify them. I will select one that looks exactly like what I want to do. I call it best. Then I look for others that are also related. I call them good. Then I will be taking from the best, the good, and be comparing and using their citations and all that. So when you do that, you will avoid a lot of repetition of in-text citations from other people. Have I answered it?
Yes,
Yes.
Prof.
All right. So Johnson, after Johnson, then Clement, and we go. We have taken, okay, today is the beginning, so that is why. But tomorrow's own, the slides are not plenty. So Johnson.
All right, Doc. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Yes, I know you've already talked about that is the main reasons behind the abstract rejection by that is journals. So please, I would want you to really, in a brief statement, try to give me that is the rejection, that is the information on the abstract rejection, that is the do's and the don'ts, so that I can really put it down, because I didn't really get it then. Thank you.
For the abstract?
That is for the articles for publication, that is the journal that usually actually rejects listed. That is your publication, your papers that you send to them.
The question that Ibrahim asked, why they reject.
Yes.
Yeah, I mentioned language. If you listen to me clearly, I mentioned language. If you have poor language, like grammatical errors, the moment the editor goes through the work, and he sees that your tenses are bad, he will reject your work. He will even take it forward for review. Then I also mentioned self-citation. You've published some papers and you just want to be citing yourself all throughout in the manuscript. Outrightly, it means that you are not going outside your knowledge. You are only dwelling on your knowledge, and which is not good as a scientist. Then your images are not good. They are blurry. They will outrightly reject your work. You are not conforming to the guidelines of the journal. The journal has guidelines to follow, how to prepare the manuscript, type the style of citation. Then you do it differently. They can reject it. Some of them are magnanimous, as I said. They can return it to you, correct and resend, but others will just reject it. Now you are using conventional methods. You don't use any unique method, but methods that are just known. You are not blending. Like I explained to Ramat, you need to blend your novelty with the conventional ones. But if all that you are doing is just conventional, then they will say there is no new thing you are bringing on board. These methods are known. And if the novelty is not there, the novelty of the work is not clearly stated, how it's contributing practically to solving solutions in society, then the work will be rejected outrightly and you have to resend it to another journal. So these are just a few. Tomorrow we'll be looking at that. Publication things, let's not ask questions on that now because that is for tomorrow. Now we've looked at how to write paper, how to do thesis and all that. Tomorrow is for the paper writing. All right?
All
So
right,
Clement, your hand is raised again. You were the last person I mentioned. After that, then we close.
Okay. Okay, Prof. Thank you so much. My question, I want to, a colleague asked a question on the chat, and I have that. It's simply, he's asking whether you can submit a review paper as your PhD thesis, and I want to dwell on your experience and your knowledge to secure. Let's say I'm doing a PhD, and my professor tells me I should conduct a review paper on my topic. And if I'm able to do that, let's say 75% done with my PhD.
Okay.
So with your experience, what does that mean? And what could go into that review paper? That will give me, let's say, 75% completion of my thesis work.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me just address it. I told you that when you are writing thesis, you should also actually try to publish the literature review aspect of your work as a review paper. You can add it as a paper from your thesis, because for PhD, in most places, you may have to publish at least one, or some places just 2 papers. So one can be a review paper on the subject. It must have a bearing with what you are doing for your PhD, not any review. You get the point? If you are working on sustainable mining, like I said, sustainable mining in Udaipur. So my review should be about sustainable mining in India and in Rajasthan state and all that. I should be talking about the subject in the study area or within that periphery. But if I just go and take a different review, not related to that subject I gave to the graduate school as my thesis, they will never accept it as a paper contributing towards to the award of your PhD. Then you can now write empirical research paper where you will have had data from the lab or from questionnaires and all that. Then you write a real paper and add to the review paper, put them together. You've met the requirements for PhD. You graduate. That is what most of us did.
Okay. Okay.
Do I
It's
answer
clear
your
now.
question?
Thank you. Yes, please.
All right. So I think Bema actually asked that he wants to add one question. So Bema, just give the question and then we close. Tomorrow we will have a lot of time to ask questions.
Thank you,
Yes,
Prof.
Ibrahim.
Yeah, I think I deserve this because it's 12 a.m. here already. So yeah. Anyway, so I'm kind of doing my PhD in geotechnical engineering, where we are dealing with soils. Okay, but then the concept with what we are doing is that we draw knowledge from medical science. Okay, so the way kidney stones are formed in the human body it's a very research area. But then we are using that concept to improve on the strength of soils, right? So when you are writing a paper on such a subject, in terms of engineering, you don't really get a lot of works that have been done in that area because it's relatively a new area, and we are sourcing the idea from medical research. Now, the question is, you have engineering and then you have medical research on the other hand. In the paper, because you also need to show the literature on the subject, is it acceptable that for an engineering paper, you will have a lot of the literature review coming from the medical research?
Okay. That's a good question. So now your work has inclination towards medicine and engineering because you are using an idea from medicine to implement it in engineering. So it's not out of place if you cite works from the medical field, which are directly related to that subject you are dealing, kidney stones. But if it is just anything about kidney stones, but not related to the actual aspect of kidney stones that you are working on, then, I mean, those citations should be avoided. But at least try to also get some citations in the engineering field, which are related to the engineering aspect of that particular work, which is related to the medicine. Maybe you'll be doing some engineering test works. So the engineering test works you'll be doing, some people would have published papers about them. So you need to cite those ones, even if it is in the method section, at least that is enough. But it wouldn't be out of place if you have a lot of inclination towards the medicine because the work is taking an idea from medicine into engineering. So it is quite novel, but you need to, have a mixture. But everyone will see that there is some inclination towards medicine because it is understandable the idea is from medicine. But look at the methods that are used, the engineering methods used. Who used them before in which engineering works? Then you cite those people. That is the approach you should use.
Wonderful.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
very much, Prof.
All right. So I think we can end it here today. Let me see whether my dean is around. Prof. Kumar, please, are you around?
Who has been?
Or Prof. Prasun? But before he takes over, I would like to just briefly say something about SPSU. As part of this workshop, I also want you to know that Padampat Singhania University is one of the best universities in India, and we have very good programs for you at even the masters. We call it MTech, Master of Technology, especially for the engineering programs. Then we have social science programs or management and commerce related programs and computer related programs. You can just Google, you'll realize that is actually one of the best universities and is owned by the, the largest cement manufacturing company in India. So we have BTech programs, MTech programs, and PhD programs, Bachelor of Computer Application and Bachelor of Business Administration programs. So we have computer science and engineering, electronics and communication engineering, mining engineering, civil engineering, biotechnology, mechanical engineering. So it's more or less like engineering and management. So under the management, we have MBA, you major in finance, we major in HR, IT, marketing, hospitality management, business analytics. We have all these ones. We even have a Bachelor of Design, computer-aided design, like softwares and all that. We have all those ones. And the fees are quite affordable. For BTech like this, you pay like $2,300 US every year. And it includes tuition, accommodation, feeding, utility bills, everything is covered. MTech, the master's level, about $1,730, which covers everything, tuition, accommodation, feeding, utility bills. You don't pay anything. So you can imagine within 2 years, you are paying like $3,200 to get your MTech in mining engineering. When you compare with other places you will go, it is very expensive. Even flight ticket alone to some of those places is very expensive. But here it is industry-based because it's an industry-related university. It's owned by the industry, gurus. So they expose you to the industry to get practical experience. Even Friday, we have students going to the mines and all that to have hands-on experience. So if you are interested in joining us, please get in touch with me. I've sent you an email. Now you have my email. You can always get in touch with me, and then we will take it up from there. Tomorrow, maybe we will talk more about that. And the slides, I will share the slides with you. I have all your emails from the registration we did. And after the workshop, we're also going to give you electronic certificates. You will see the signature of our Vice Chancellor, the deans in charge. They will all sign, and you can use it for your career progress. All right. So, but you have to join tomorrow. If you don't join tomorrow, you will not be qualified to get the certificate. Tomorrow's on is the determinant of you getting the certificate. Please. All right. So thank you so much. I don't know. So Professor Naveen Kumar or Professor Prasoon. Where is he? Okay. All right. So let's meet tomorrow. We can sign off, and then we meet tomorrow the same time, 4:30 p.m. IST time, or that is like 11 a.m. in GMT or UTC 00. Some of you don't have the link for registration. So how did you join? Because the joining link comes with the registration. We gave all that together. So I don't know, unless maybe you contact us backstage. So don't be worried. After tomorrow, you'll get all the slides. And then a week later or some few days later, you get the certificates. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best. See you tomorrow.
See
Bye.
you.
See you. Thank you very much, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Professor.
Thank you,
Bye.
Professor.
Thank you.